My name's Phil Lowe. I'm here today to do a short piece about how to write a theatre review based on my own experience. So the first thing I think we need to look at in writing a theatre review is obviously, like any kind of review, to have an interest in the subject and hopefully to have a background, whether it be a basic background or something like a degree in the subject, for my example in theatre and the performing arts, maybe going forward to a master's or even a PhD. So, not to be afraid of writing a review, we'll start with the basics. So having an interest in the subject includes not only looking at the programme notes, which come with most of the reviewing opportunities, but also looking online, doing some research, reading the play beforehand, getting very familiar with the play. If it's a new piece of work, obviously that does make things a little more challenging, but that can be part of the fun of actually writing the review. Most reviews for newspapers, you're looking around 400, maybe 500 words, which is not a huge amount. On a blog or a website, then you can choose how much you wish to write. My own suggestion would be somewhere between 400 and 600 words, and then you keep the audience's attention, hopefully within your writing, and any further than that and people are likely, with a short span of interest, to go off onto another thing that they're doing in their lives. I think it's also really important to read other reviews, whether they be good, bad or indifferent, whether they come from, in the theatre sense, from the major newspapers like The Guardian or The Observer, Times, other newspapers that cover reviews, including the Stage, which is the industry newspaper. Always worth reading those, pick up ideas, not necessarily to copy them, it's not a good idea, but also to get some ideas of phrasing or ways of describing things if you're not used to describing things on the stage. Personally, I don't think it's important to completely retell the story in the review, especially if there are surprises in the story. Always important to keep something back, but to give some element of excitement in the review, because after all, the main intent of a review, in my opinion, is to actually encourage people to go to the theatre. So if you're writing something that's a teasing way of expressing about the play, how you felt about the play or the show, the emotional impact it had on the audience, the feelings they came away with, how it visually looked, how it sounded, the quality and the professionalism of the production, these are all important matters to consider in a review. When writing a review, it isn't necessary to mention every single person in the production. Just imagine you had a production where there are 30 people in the production. That would be crazy to try and mention every single person. And the review, in a sense, would become a mundanity. It would be a listing of everyone there and how wonderful they all were. Isn't necessary at all. So in terms of focusing the review that you may be writing, maybe consider the main performers, but also whilst sitting in the audience watching the actual performance itself, consider how maybe an individual performance has made you feel, whether it amused or whether it gave some deeper emotion to the play, or whether it furthered the nature of the play, and also the director's viewpoint, how they've approached the play. Sometimes it can be quite traditional, and of course other times, conversely, it can be quite a radical approach. These are all fascinating things in your life as a reviewer, and worth considering. In terms of writing the review, there are many different ways to approach the actual reviewing experience. I was taught some while ago by the Reviews Hub, and I've kept up the habit because I think it's most appropriate to my writing to speak from an immediate point of view, as if you were there, you are there now watching the play, and not to use the tense I or we, but rather say one or this reviewer feels that. I prefer this removed way of writing because it gives more impact in terms of an immediacy of being there. So if someone is reading, like any piece of journalism, about the experience that they feel that they are actually sharing right now with the audience or reader, then to me it is much more valid than someone saying I went and I saw and we saw this particular show and we thought it was good. So speaking in past tense, to me that's already lost the impetus of the review. That's not to say that professional and amateur people who write in that way are wrong in writing that way. It's just my own preference. The starring system that I use on eastmidlandstheatre.com. This is based on one from the Reviews Hub, which I found very useful, and I don't tend to star things really lowly. I think the least I would give something at the moment, of course this could change, would be 3 stars, and that would be that it's a good performance, and I would say that it's better than a night in front of the TV. 3.5 stars, an enjoyable production, not going to set the world alight, but well worth a visit. 4 stars, great production, no real flaws, definitely worth a visit. 4.5, excellent production, just lacks that little bit of magic, would definitely recommend to anyone. And finally, 5 stars, a production that is absolutely faultless, utterly winning, and something that would stay with someone watching it for years, i.e. unmissable. So when writing your review, it's important to be as concise as you can in the review. As I mentioned before, for a newspaper or magazine, tend to be somewhere about 400 words for a full length play, 250 to 400 for a shorter play. It's also important not to be viciously critical about any of the actors or the director, i.e. not to make any personal nasty remarks. Nobody's going to get very far in writing reviews like that. So also important to look at how the play was acted, in what period it was acted, how that came across, whether you felt the characters were fully rounded characters there, how they interacted with each other, maybe whether there was any political intent or socially political intent to the play, either modern or traditional. When writing the review, it's important to make the actual play title clear, and that is usually done by writing in italics. When mentioning the actors, let's say the actor's called John Smith, you would originally start by writing John Smith, and then in brackets the character they were playing, Malvolio for example, and then continue. And then when you continue to write, if you choose to do so, about John Smith, you would just use his last name. So you don't write John, sounds far too personal, but you would write Smith. So you could, for example, write John Smith, brackets Malvolio, was very amusing in the part, and then mention perhaps something about a particular scene in which you felt this character was amusing, full stop with that sentence. If you wish to continue about this actor, you would then say something like, Smith went on further into the play, and the degradation of the character was quite poignant as well as being amusing, and so therefore Shakespeare may have meant that kind of thing. So thank you very much for listening to this short video. I hope it's helpful in terms of anybody out there starting to write reviews. Please have a look at my website, which is www.eastmidlandstheatre.com. The original website started 3 years ago in the form of a blog, which is philloactorblogspot.co.uk, and it's one of the Google blogs. If you look at the profile at the top of the page, you can find all this information, plus any reviews about myself as a writer. So anyway, thank you very much for listening, and any questions, please write to me on the website. And thank you. Bye-bye.